So, a man in his final weeks of life decided to draw a picture depicting what was going on inside of his brain moments before he passed away. And this is my take on it. And also, I just want to let you know that this image has been enhanced through AI just so I can make it more clear for you to be able to see. But it is the original drawing. This is actually what he drew. And when you look at the drawing, it almost looks like a gateway to the sun. Now, I'm not claiming to know exactly what was happening inside of his mind. Nobody could know what was going on. I wasn't in his brain. But if you really look closely, there almost seems to be a procession of souls moving towards the sun. That's what it looks like. In the upper right corner, it says upper realm, oversoul, because if you are on a level awake enough to realize, you can think of the sun as a representation of the monad, which is the older traditional name of our source or the creator of this creation, what we call life or reality, which altogether is an overminded oversoul, the mind of God, or God's dream world, if you will. And what really catches our attention is the middle sequence where it says, wait, no, not yet, stop, maybe, yes. In that section, we could all agree that the middle tier has got to be an antagonizing portion of this process. Because what if there is something deeper behind this imagery that is actually true in representing what happens after we die? What if the sun has been symbolically understood not simply as a material object in the sky, but as a gateway? In the esoteric interpretations that I explore, the sun and the moon are not ordinary material objects at all. They are understood as plasma portals, wormholes, gateways, or openings in the sky. They are being projected from a higher frequency of light and energy from the black sun, which is the pure, undifferentiated, original origin of life and ether, pure potential. And this is where the idea of the holy whole becomes interesting. Rather than imagining the sun as a merely physical ball of fire floating through an infinite vacuum, the sun can be interpreted as an opening through which another source of energy or consciousness becomes visible. And this completely changes the way that we interpret ancient solar symbolism. Instead of saying there's the sun and it's a spherical object in the sky, therefore everything else must be spinning spheres in space, no, the alternative interpretation depicts what if the primary luminaries we see in the heavens are manifestations of something passing through a greater celestial structure. This gives more merit to the concept of flat earth, and that this really is a special place of love and creation and purpose, of a higher dimensionality, and that there is an eternal cyclical loop of spiritual energy that currently is and always has been regenerative and recursive in the realm that we live in. Then the primary luminaries are more than just a burning ball of gas and a moon rock that formed itself from a random explosion long ago. It really changes the purpose of what those heavenly luminaries represent. Gateways, portals, the gate of the gods. We have to interpret the symbolism that appears around the two solstice points. Now, I realize that the symbolism that I'm presenting could potentially be reversed or vice versa. I get that. But the roles of Cancer and Capricorn may be reversed depending on which direction we understand the soul's journey. One interpretation would be that the Tropic of Cancer is the gateway through which souls descend into the earthly realm, while the Tropic of Capricorn is the gateway through which souls reascend, returning to their seats of immortality and becoming gods. Or it could be the other way around. Capricorn could represent the descent of souls into incarnation on earth, while Cancer could represent their ascent back into immortality. Either way, the point is that there are two gates, and this amplifies the magnitude of these two cardinal points on the zodiac to more than just two solstice points. The solstices are two solstitial divine turning points with two possible directions of passage: descent into incarnation and ascension back up to source from the earth after death. So rather than forcing the symbolism into one fixed direction, perhaps the deeper mystery is understanding what happens at each gate and whether the soul is entering this realm or departing from it. At the Tropic of Cancer, during the summer solstice, the sun reaches its highest zenith position. Symbolically, this becomes the upper celestial gateway, and it's the reason why I claim that this position is the gateway of the gods, is because the sun is at its most prominent point, its most elevated expression of the yearly Analema cycle, the blossoming, the Garden of Eden, the place of fullness and illumination. And then we have the opposite gate at the Tropic of Capricorn. During the winter solstice, the sun reaches its lowest declination position. Symbolically, this becomes the gateway of men because it is the lower gate associated with various traditions with descent, darkness, Tartarus, Hades, or the Garden of Gethsemane. So regardless, two gates, two turning points, two directions through the celestial cycle. And suddenly, the ancient language of ascending and descending, entering and exiting, birth and death, begins to take on another meaning. This is where the words that were attributed to Jesus become so symbolically important and very interesting. In the Bible, in the book of John, chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus says, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And in John chapter 10, verse 9, Jesus says, "I am the door." And in other Bible versions, it literally says, "I am the gate." Jesus is saying, "I am the gateway." Now, if we approach this transcendentally, rather than taking the imagery at face value, the symbolism becomes fascinating. Jesus is repeatedly associated with the way, the light, the life, the door, the gate, the gateway. And if the sun is being used as a celestial symbol of divine illumination, with Jesus representing the sun symbolically, then the statement that the way to the Father is through Christ can be interpreted as a passage through the solar principle, the light that stands between the material world and the divine source behind it, beyond it, the black sun that's projecting it. This is where the ancient stories about the soul becomes remarkably interesting. In esoteric traditions, there are recurring ideas that the sun and the moon function as celestial gateways associated with incarnation, death, and the movement of souls. This is also very peculiarly connected to how we see the magneticity of the so-called solar flares of the sun curving, zigzagging, and ricocheting back and forth that could quite literally be the various souls manifesting and unmanifesting right before our very eyes. Potentially, but we don't know for sure, but it could be. But either way, the process is the soul enters, the soul experiences embodiment in this material world, the soul leaves, and then the cycle recycles and begins again and again, so on and so forth, very simply. In this interpretation, birth and death are not absolute beginnings and endings. They are transition states between states of existence. The physical body is temporary. This is a meat suit that we inhabit when we come here. But whatever we call the deeper essence of our souls, ourselves, consciousness, spirit, or energy, or ether, it's understood as something that continues beyond the material form. And this is where the principle that energy cannot simply be destroyed becomes symbolically powerful. Everything just transcends and continues recycling. What we call death could therefore be understood not as annihilation, but as transformation and redistribution beyond the physical life that we have right now. The form changes, the state changes, the location changes, but the underlying process and essence still continues on. And perhaps this is why so many traditions developed concepts resembling heaven and hell, purgatory and reincarnation, ascension and descending, judgment and rebirth, etc. Maybe these are not merely descriptions of physical locations somewhere above or below us. Maybe they are descriptions of states of consciousness and stages within a greater cycle of existence. And that brings us right back to the drawing. A man approaching the end of his physical life draws this, what appears to be a series of souls moving toward a brilliant gateway, the sun. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it was something he perceived that we do not understand. Maybe it was simply the product of his mind. But we obviously cannot put to words what was actually happening in his brain when he drew this picture once again. But the symbolism is almost impossible to ignore because it resembles the concepts that many of us are aware of, and also that I'm explaining here in this video that comes to my mind that relates to the Bible and historical theology concepts and esoteric ideas, etc. Because if the sun in the sky is a projection of the black sun energy and has been understood throughout history as a representation of divine light, resurrection, consciousness, and passage between worlds, then perhaps that the strange drawing is not only showing souls going into the sun, perhaps it's showing something much deeper, the over-minded oversoul approaching the gate. And maybe that's why the question is not simply, where do we go when we die? Maybe the deeper question is, which gate are we going to go through? Are we alive right now? Or are we waiting to actually be born again? And this stuff really keeps me up at night. And it's so freaky to think about. I'm not going to lie. It's very heavy to ponder when you actually think about this. So maybe this explains why this guy drew the middle segment with all the maybes, wait, stop, because depending on how high we raise our frequency in this physical material existence of reality may determine which way we go through to the sun and ultimately which direction we will go. As exemplified in Vedic Hindu cosmology, it depicts the layers of our realm, which connect to the hyperbola of the black sun, the central portal, almost like an elevator for the soul. We either ascend upward into the higher angelic realms after death, or we descend downward into the infernal realms below. Maybe. That's why we have to understand that becoming Christ actually meant achieving Christ consciousness, which is what Jesus' teachings are all about. Meditating, raising our vibrational frequency, gaining knowledge, raising our Christ oil to the pineal gland, becoming illuminated, etc. Expressing pure love to everyone. Because we are all one in the same essence. We are all like little godlet droplets of the same divine source. And this makes so much sense when we read into the secret gospels of the Nag Hammadi Scriptures. This is very important to end in this video because this is where I really want to leave you at. I want you to listen to what these texts are saying. If you guys made it to the end of this video, I really do appreciate you. We're going to read in the secret gospel of Thomas, and it reads, "These are the hidden secret teachings of Jesus. And he said, whoever discovers the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death." It's very important to understand this esoterically, because within the foundation we've been building, this line is so important because it points toward awakening and transformation of consciousness, discovering the hidden meaning within the teachings and recognizing the divine nature within oneself. And once the seeker discovers the interpretation that they know themselves and awakens to their true divine essence, they transcend the ordinary understanding of life and death. That connects directly back to the famous phrase, God is man awakened and man is God asleep. That the soul that remains asleep experiences the cycle unconsciously. The soul that awakens remembers what it is. So the Gospel of Thomas fits beautifully into the larger theme of seeking, discovering, awakening, ascending beyond the veil, beyond ordinary experience of life and death. Jesus said, "Let one who seeks not stop seeking until one finds. When one finds, one will be troubled, and when one is troubled, one will marvel and will reign over all." He's talking about when you go through this realization process, you become scatterbrained and you figure all this out. But overall, ultimately, you will reign over all of this confusion of life and you really see it for what it is. Jesus said, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom is in heaven,' then the birds of heaven will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside you and it is outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are the children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you dwell in poverty, and you are poverty." And also, we're going to read in the secret teachings of Sylvanus, in the Nag Hammadi Scriptures. It reads, "Christ is the true light. Live with Christ and he will save you. And for he is the true light and the sun of life," the S-U-N. "Just as the visible sun shines on physical eyes, so Christ illuminates every mind and heart. For if one who is wicked during his lifetime has an evil death, how much more so does one who has a blind mind? For every blind person remains incapable of seeing it. So it is with people who do not have a sound mind. They do not delight in acquiring the light of Christ, which is reason." And it reads down below, the reason is referring to logos in the human mind, which is the connecting link to Christ and the logos, or I like to say the astrologos. For everything visible is a copy of what is invisible. As a fire burns in a place without being confined to it, so it is with the sun and the sky. All of its rays extend to places on earth. It is a single being that Christ has, and he gives light to every place. But it is as impossible to look at Christ as it is to look at the sun. God sees everyone. No one looks at him. Christ receives and gives ungrudgingly. He is the light of the Father. Thus he sheds light on every place. Christ is all, who has inherited everything from the one who is. For the all is Christ, apart from his incorruptibility. When you consider sin, it is not anything real. The apprehension of imperishability is the apprehension of Christ. He is the light shining undefiled. For the sun shines on every impure place, yet it is not defiled. Understand by this that the one who is in the darkness will not be able to see anything without receiving the light, by which means he can see. Examine yourself to see whether you really have the light, so that if you ask about these things, you may understand how you will escape. For many are seeking in darkness, and they grope about wishing to understand, since there is no light for them. And it says down in the footnotes, Christ has already been compared to the sun, the S-U-N. So in closing, maybe the real message behind all of this is not simply where does the soul go after death, but what the soul actually becomes before death, what we do in our lifetime. The ancient teachings keep pointing us back to the same idea. Seek and you shall find. Know yourself, awaken, etc. Because, like the phrase we said before, if God is man awake and man is God asleep, then perhaps the journey through the celestial gates is not merely a journey through space. It is a journey through consciousness. And maybe the greatest gateway is not above us at all. Maybe the gateway is within us, inside of us. So the question is not just which way will the soul go after we pass on. The real question is, will you awaken and realize it before you reach the gate?